Hey everyone, what's happening? Overworld Games here, and yes, we are talking about the Cyberpunk sequel, which of course is dubbed Cyberpunk Orion. That's the code name currently. More on that in a moment, by the way. But yeah, we've got some new updates from CD Projekt Red, some very interesting things happening because, get this, one of the most requested features for 2077 might actually end up in its sequel, and that is third-person perspective. We'll talk about it in just a moment. Then we're going to talk about, the life paths, because a lot of us felt like the life paths in Cyberpunk were very underwhelming. Well, CD Projekt Red knows this, and they have some interesting things to say about that as well. And yes, we're going to talk about how far along development is. And get this, The Witcher 4 has some updates about it as well. I can't wait for that one. All right, so let's get into this one. First and foremost, starting with third-person perspective. So here's the article. It says CD Projekt has no regrets about making Cyberpunk first person and is yet to see on the sequel. So they're not completely counting it out whatsoever, which gives me a lot of hope. We're going to dive into this article further. It goes on to say this right here. That's according to the game's quest director, Paolo Sasco, who discusses the studio's decision to switch from The Witcher's third-person perspective to a first-person one for Cyberpunk during an investor Q&A session on Thursday. I remember that, by the way, real quick, how much backlash there was when Cyberpunk's gameplay was first revealed. So many people were hating on it just because it was in first person. Let's keep going, shall we? So, it says this, Sasco was asked whether the company has any regrets about the decision and whether it might consider letting players toggle between first and third person perspective in the game sequel. Oh boy, let's see what he says. That's a great question, but there's no regrets on our part. I was one of the people who started developing the first person or the first prototypes of this system for Cyberpunk using the Witcher technology. What we wanted to do was for Cyberpunk is to have its own identity and to be noticeable as a different thing. And you know what? I think that's actually smart to have the Witcher 3 offer up like third person perspective and then to know that Cyberpunk is going to offer first person. However, I still want the option to be able to toggle between both perspectives. So let's keep going. It says these days it's YouTube, Twitch, and screenshots that sell games. And this is a way one can use to show the identity and individuality to players. A first person perspective helped Cyberpunk develop this identity a lot. We put in a lot of work in preparing this body presence so that it would shine through this first-person perspective. You could see the outstretched hand or outstretched limbs when you're sitting in a car seat, for instance, but that wasn't what your question was about, was it? No, yeah, let's get to the third-person perspective quote here. It says, many journalists also notice how characteristic it is as contrasted with other products out there on the market. I'm not going to quote any titles, but for Orion, which of course the Cyberpunk sequel, we're yet to see. And they're leaving it open-ended. I think they're actually like throwing it out to you guys, the community. So my question is this. Do you want Cyberpunk 2077 sequel to have a third person perspective? Or do you say, hey, just stick to first person? Because you got to remember, they also have to develop the environment itself around a third person perspective first, I would believe. And then they can further develop a first person perspective for sure. But, you know, I do want to say this, like, third person is important for customization. If they're going to go all in on things like outfits, gear, and that sort of thing, which they kind of did in Cyberpunk 2077, I think people want to see their character on screen, see that cool customization. You know, with Bethesda's titles, if we're going to talk about third person perspective, they at least offer both perspectives for, you know, Fallout, Skyrim, Starfield. Starfield had great improvements with third person over Bethesda's previous titles. And I think that's kind of what CD Projekt Red is looking to here, is to be able to offer both perspectives, which I think would be fantastic if it worked out that way. Which, you know what, it seems like from this quote, that might be the direction they're headed in. And you got to remember, there's some evidence here from job listings at CD Projekt Red saying that they were hiring specifically for third-person camera work for both Cyberpunk franchise and, of course, The Witcher. Makes sense that they would do that for The Witcher, but Cyberpunk being in there, that told me a lot that, yeah, it is very, very likely that we would be seeing third-person in Cyberpunk Orion. But yeah, let's get into this one right here, because it seems like people are kind of panicking over the fact that, you know, don't bail on first person for the Cyberpunk sequel. Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. Even if they do offer third person perspective, don't panic. I'm certain they're going to have first person in there as well. And then there's the life paths, of course, that was underwhelming in 2077. Well, get this. It seems like they're going to be taking a new approach to this in the sequel. Check it out. It says Cyberpunk, codenamed Orion, may feature grander branching storylines determined by the player's starting life path, which were, of course, Street Kid, Corpo, and Nomad in 2077. Now, speaking on the Answered podcast, CD Projekt Red narrative director Philip Weber said the life path's lack of influence in the majority of Cyberpunk is something that the studio wants to improve in future titles. Now, while Weber is currently working on the next mainline Witcher game, codenamed Polaris, Cyberpunk's sequel is currently in the conceptual stages of development too. So, yeah, that means we are really far out from seeing any type of like gameplay for Cyberpunk sequel, unfortunately. Thankfully, they aren't going to be doing that marketing ploy and giving us some fancy smancy blown up CGI trailer like they did for 2077. Yeah, they're taking a different approach with that one. They're being a lot more careful, as they have confirmed, which I think is wise to do. But, you know, when it comes to life paths, that's an interesting one. I think that one of the games that is influencing a lot of the open world RPGs is Baldur's Gate 3. It is the stellar flagship title when it comes to choice and consequence and basically being able to do whatever you want. And I think a lot of these devs are really paying attention to that and be like, how are we going to compete? And they're going into most likely this sequel knowing that, hey, they've really got to step up their game if they're going to be offering choice and consequence in the Cyberpunk sequel. And it looks like that's what they plan on doing. Now, we've got to talk about, of course, what Cyberpunk is going to eventually become entirely. This is definitely an interesting quote here because I think we're going to be seeing some big online stuff as well. So check this out right here. It says this: CD Projekt Red wants Cyberpunk's sequel, codenamed Orion, to undergo a similar evolution to that of the Witcher franchise. Now, speaking to PC Gamer, the narrative director compared the growth between 2007's The Witcher and its 2011 sequel, Assassin's King, with CD Projekt Red's hopes for its sci-fi role-playing game franchise. Let's get to the quote. It says, "Consider the Witcher games and how much they change with each installment. We want a similar evolution here. Cyberpunk 2077 was our first venture into a futuristic sci-fi world with a ton of new gameplay mechanics, narrative tone, themes, and art direction." And, you know, it gets me super hyped to know that this is the direction that Cyberpunk is headed in ultimately, because you have to remember where The Witcher began. It began as not even an open world game whatsoever. Then you have The Witcher 2, which was more like hub space, if you would. Definitely not open world. And then The Witcher 3 made this absolutely mind-blowing leap to an open world game. You have got to consider like the evolution of Cyberpunk starting open world and then building it out like that. I think it's going to be quite impressive with what they do here. And when we talk about evolution, I do think multiplayer is going to be within that. I just hope it doesn't take away from single player. It just seems like with Epic Games supporting them, you would assume that they would have the infrastructure, considering that they're experts with multiplayer, with, you know, things like Fortnite, that yes, Cyberpunk would be getting some sort of major multiplayer treatment, which, you know what, I'm down for. It'd be really cool to be able to roam around like a New Night City with other players and friends and stuff. Now, it says this right here to wrap it up. It says some of this stuff worked almost right out of the box, such as the art, city design, music, interactive scene system, play styles. Other aspects took more time to get right, like character progression, NPC interactivity, and optimization. Now, that's natural. It's impossible to nail everything on your first try. Now, with all the game's elements iterated and working well, we'll focus on connecting them even tighter and creating a coherent, total immersion experience. Very curious indeed. So yeah, I don't want to overhype it, of course. We'll see. I really hope that they can live up to the expectations. But one of the reasons why I am excited for this Cyberpunk sequel is because of Phantom Liberty. They absolutely nailed that one in so many ways. So that gets me very, very excited for the future of CD Projekt Red. And I've got to bring this up right here. The name Project Orion could actually have multiple meanings. This is really, really fascinating. And I want to get into the actual meaning of like the name if you're named Orion. So yeah, let's talk about Project Orion, because yeah, it could also mean this, that the game will have a greater emphasis on space. That would be very, very cool if Cyberpunk took that approach. We did see some teases and things related to space stations with Cyberpunk 2077. It seems like they were interested in tapping into that. Now, will the game entirely take place in space? I doubt it. I have my doubts about that. I think that they're going to want to bring you down to the dystopian, seedy underworld of whatever city they choose. I don't know if it's going to be an evolution or not of Night City. That would actually be pretty cool. But it might be an entirely new city. But I think that they definitely want it to be where you're in a neon-drenched city type environment. If that means they can offer that up in space stations, yeah, that would be very, very cool. But I think that would be only one part of the game. I think a lot of you would be very curious about the meaning of Orion. It says this right here: a constellation of the equator east of Taurus, represented on charts by the figure of a hunter with belt and sword. And then the second meaning says a giant hunter slain by Artemis in Greek mythology. I think it's very curious that it revolves around a hunter. When I think of a hunter in a cyberpunk theme, I think of a bounty hunter. Now, there's one game in particular that never did release, and it was Prey 2. If you guys remember that one, it looked absolutely phenomenal from the conceptual gameplay that they showed. I was just like, man, I can't wait for this. Then it was ultimately canceled. I really, really hope that the Cyberpunk sequel revolves around a bounty hunter, and it's more like tapping into what Prey 2 was supposed to be. Man, I'm telling you what, I would be so down for that. And I feel like it's kind of absent from the gaming market, and I think people would be super hyped for that one. Yeah, we've also got to talk about some more updates from the devs. So yeah, let's just get straight into the quote here. So it says, the project is on a conceptual design level right now, and it's going to be designed by a team of veterans who were responsible for fine-tuning Cyberpunk and designing Phantom Liberty. So, you know, the good news there is that they still have veteran talent from the games that we know and love already on the project. It's not like they're going to be starting fresh here, of course. Now, furthermore, it goes on to say this right here: we're going to work out of North America, Vancouver, and Boston locations. Team leadership are already there. And late in 2024, we're going to be working with teams comprising several dozen people, while as a target, half of the developers are going to be working out of northern US and the other half out of Poland. So this is definitely a very new type of development scheme, if you would, for CD Projekt Red. They've never had it where it was like they were in the United States and then they were in Poland and tag teaming together. We'll see how this one plays out, but I think that their leadership is really, really good right now. And Paolo Sasco, I believe, is going to be in North America heading a lot of the stuff over there. So, you know, he's really, really been great about communicating with the community, and I'm very excited for the fact that he is one of the leaders over there in North America. Now, that leads us to what is CD Projekt Red doing as a whole. And we've got, of course, Cyberpunk being developed, and then, yes, The Witcher 4. So what about The Witcher 4? Check it out. It says this right here: nearly half of CD Projekt Red is now working on The Witcher 4, codename Polaris, following the release, of course, of Phantom Liberty. So it says confirmation arrived during CD Projekt Red's latest earnings report, which indicated almost 330 developers, or just around 50% of the development staff, were working on the highly anticipated sequel as of October 31st, 2023. Now, CD Projekt Red CEO Adam Kinski also confirmed the company expects more than 400 developers will be working on Polaris by mid-2024. And the Polaris team had grown to 260 members as of July 2023. So yeah, this is just keeps snowballing into more developers joining that team. You could see how big of a project The Witcher 4 is going to be. And yeah, you can expect, of course, The Witcher 4 to release before Cyberpunk sequel. Yeah, that's just how it's going to be staggered. I'm equally excited for both, of course. So I'm really, really curious to see what happens with that one. All right, so here we go. It is that time again to go over your top comments. Remember, leave a comment down below. It could end up right here in a future video. And smack that like button if you made it this far in the video. But let's do this. My most recent video was about Starfield and how it's getting a big overhaul here in 2024. Every 6 weeks, we're going to be getting updates. And then, of course, there was that controversial award that it received with the Steam Awards, Most Innovative Gameplay. Let's see what you guys had to say about this. Now, we have this one right here. I feel I had to rate which portion of Starfield was the best, it would hands down be the shipbuilding for me. I think they did that part well and sink hours into it every time I need to move that one little part and I'm down. Which, begs the question I got to ask. Do you guys think that that is the innovative part of Starfield? I know that's not exactly like core gameplay, but it is still in the gameplay. So I'm kind of curious to see what you guys make of that one when we talk about that award that was given to Starfield. Maybe they were talking about that. I don't know. Now, furthermore, we have this one right here. If I can find it, where did it go? All right, here it is. It says, I put a lot of time into shipbuilding. It's really fun and nostalgic as well, since I drew planes, build scale model kits when I was a teen. It took a little time, but when you get the hang of it, you can make awesome spaceships in Starfield. So I'm really looking forward to the enhancements, and I hope you can save them in a schematic and import them. A place where you can showcase your builds would also be nice, because the only place there is now is uploading it to YouTube or put a few pictures on Reddit, but I didn't have time to do that yet. So yeah, I totally agree with you. Mentioning importing and exporting, by the way, I would love to be able to save blueprints and take that into New Game Plus. That's one of the biggest problems with the game, at least in my opinion, is New Game Plus. But yeah, what else was said here? So let's check it out. We have this right here from the Chronicles of Louis, who says, happy 2024 Open World Gaming. Glad I found your channel. Interesting and exciting news. This game is going to be massively improved with the release of the Creation Kit. And to be honest, I don't mind it already, though my time has been spent almost entirely on Crete and hundreds of hours logged. So yeah, it's cool to see that there are still fans of Starfield. Yes, we're kind of sitting in somewhat of a similar situation to when Cyberpunk was released. Don't get me wrong, Cyberpunk released way more buggy and with more problems in that regard. But, I think the core of Starfield has some issues. I think that they can improve the exploration, can improve what happens when they, kind of like randomly generate a mine or dungeon. That definitely needs to be updated. Those core things, if they can just tap into that somehow and update that, then I think Starfield would really, really be an excellent game. Man, if only. So we'll see if they can go that far with the updates. I'm not going to hold my breath, but to consider that they're doing this every 6 weeks throughout 2024, well, we'll see. But yeah, thank you all so much for the comments. Stay tuned here for more Cyberpunk, Starfield, open world gaming goodness. Let me know what you guys want to see as well. But I will see you all next time. Take care.